Howdy, folks. Widgett Walls from needcoffee.com here. Back again for another Wayhomer review. Here's how it works for the uninitiated. I've just seen a film. It's in the cinema over there. I mean, it's still in the cinema. They're playing another round of it. And I'm going to tell you about that film on my way home, because supposedly in some universe that made sense at one point. And tonight, we're here to talk about Star Wars Rise of Skywalker. The Rise of Skywalker, I think. Okay, synopsis. Let's see. So, The Last Jedi left the Resistance, led by General Leia, in disarray, partly because Oscar Isaac's character Poe is a moron, and partly because the First Order just had them outgunned. And so they open this new chapter, episode 9, with a shadow hanging over them of a threat from a threat they thought was behind them is now reared up in front of them again, and they have to deal with that, along with the fact that Rey is trying to do Jedi training, and Finn is not doing much but running around and yelling Rey, and then Poe is being Poe, which is unfortunate because we hope he would turn into a better character by this point. But yeah, so it's basically the final battle between whoever the evil bits are and then the Resistance. That's your synopsis. Okay, so first of all, let's give some credit where credit is due. This is the end of a trilogy of trilogies, which I don't know that we've seen before. And I know a lot of people, back before the prequel trilogy came out, were saying, oh yeah, no, Lucas isn't going to do it. And I said, no, he's absolutely going to do it. I think he was just waiting for his divorce to go through, so, all of that would be finalized, and then he could kick it off, and basically that's what happened. So, but no, I mean, this is unprecedented, kind of like what MCU did with Avengers Endgame and Infinity War, but not exactly. But it's still impressive that they managed to pull off a saga of any kind, shape, form, or color, whatever. Also, the star character, Leia, Carrie Fisher's untimely death, no doubt, I would love to know what, you could tell, obviously, there were some changes, but it's like, well, what was the original plan, and how did that get screwed by Carrie Fisher passing away? I mean, so to give credit where credit is due, they had to deal with that on top of the fact that this is an ending to a much beloved saga. I mean, it's an ending of the saga. There's still going to be Star Wars, but it's the ending of this particular, the Skywalker saga, we think. I mean, you know how nothing ever ends, and you'll be yelling at me, but eventually someone will remake Star Wars. Just get over it and understand that. But anyway, and endings are hard. Endings are really, really hard. Starting a story, kicking off an idea, that's easy. I mean, you could do that all day long. But actually coming up with a coherent ending to the story, especially one that wraps up materials and elements from, decades of trilogy bits happening, and you got your work cut out for you. All of that being said, They kind of, I can see where even if all the stars had aligned and you know, in a better universe where Carrie Fisher was still with us, I could see where they still would have kind of messed it up like they did. And why do I say they messed it up? Well, basically, there were certain things I loved about The Last Jedi, and I can't specify what they are, not because I'm worried about spoiling The Last Jedi for you, but me saying that they basically undid them and or ignored them would be a spoiler for this film. But some of that did happen. And I think it's obvious from the trailer what the evil from the past is that's back. And since this happens in literally like the first 10 seconds of the film, I will tell you this, because you will see it when you sit down. Emperor Palpatine is reintroduced in the scroll, in the words going up on the screen. This very important thing that is going to tie up, the villain that's going to tie up everything, and you've brought him back from the dead in the scroll. I mean, I don't even think Marvel Comics or DC Comics, in their wisdom of bringing characters back left and right when they've died, I don't think they've ever done it in like the text box at the beginning of an issue. I don't even think that's happened. I mean, it may have, but I've not seen it. I'm not aware of it. So that is performing with a lot of testicular circumference. Let's put it that way. So that is just the beginning of a string of disappointments. In that, like I said, some of my favorite things about Last Jedi, the things that I found so wonderfully subversive, and not, again, like we were talking about before, subversive for the sake of subversion, but that made sense and took the story in an interesting direction, those things got undone. And if you thought that thinking about Last Jedi, if your brain waking up and you pondering certain aspects of Last Jedi, and you would think, oh, I see holes in it, you have no idea what awaits you in Rise of Skywalker, unless, of course, you've already seen it. Because there seem to be holes everywhere you turn around. And we don't, the road to get back to my house is not long enough for us to go through them, even if I wanted to do that and spoil it for you. But I don't do that. But suffice it to say, it needed a polish. And a lot of these holes could have been fixed with just a few lines of dialogue at the very least. And also, I know if you've seen any of these at all, you know that I'm a big fan of, you do need space for scenes to breathe and for things to set in. You need pacing, right? But you also don't want to have a bunch of unnecessary space of dead air, basically. And there are certain films where I've said, you could have trimmed 15, 20 minutes off of this by just, going through and losing some of the fat. Well, they tried that with, I swear, the first 20 minutes of this. It's like the editor was on Adderall or something. It was really bizarre in that it's like, okay, if you've ever used like a recording device that is set to record only when it hears something, and the moment it stops hearing any audio, then it will pause itself and then start back up again when it hears something else. So what you get is this disjointed, weird, kind of jerky conversation recorded with no space in between any of the people talking. That's basically the first 20 minutes of the film, where there's scads of information being laid out before you, and it's almost impossible to take it all in because they're just throwing it at you. And I understand, again, they're at the end and they're trying to figure out how to end this damn thing, but it's still just too much. I mean, so there are lots of problems. The problem, however, is not the cast. because the cast is doing the best that they can with what they've been given, which I think is sort of the fate of Star Wars casts when they get to the end of a trilogy, apart from Return of the Jedi, which, I mean, you could make a case that that's the same, but, you know, especially in Revenge of the Sith, which I only remember the title of because I looked it up a couple days ago, and here. So, as I said, John Boyega is, you know, doesn't have that much to do. Kelly Marie Tran has nothing to do. And, you know, some of the people that they have in there, you're like, oh, you're here to say some lines because, you know, and I don't even know what your character name is. You could essentially be, you know, as would happen in a play, oh, you know, bystander A, bystander B. I mean, that sort of thing. So, and also, I think everyone knows what a MacGuffin is. Yes, the MacGuffin is, I think Hitchcock coined the term. It's basically the thing that drives, you know, the narrative forward. It's the whatever it is that, you know, the characters are after. You know, speaking of the MCU, it was the Infinity Stones that they were after. They had 6 shiny MacGuffins to go after. But here, they have, it almost seems like they needed to insert these MacGuffins because they realized that they had 2.5 hours to fill, and they had to do something, because if they just skipped forward to the final battle, then that would be kind of lame. And the problem is that once you establish that these MacGuffins are needed to get them to the final battle, the fact that the MacGuffins exist are more of those holes that we discussed, and, you know, gaping bits where the light shines through, that causes problems with the film as a whole, if that makes sense without giving anything away. So, I mean, it's a disappointing end to the Skywalker saga, if indeed it is the end, which I don't think it is. I think there will be some other movie or something that runs with it, because that's how the law of relative development works. But this, the planned original trilogy of trilogies ends, and it ends with not a bang, but a sort of convoluted and confused whimper. And I don't know what Lucas originally had planned. I don't know if they had taken that and run with it, if it would have been better. Maybe this is what he had planned, and they just, you know, put their own spin on it. I have no idea. I'm sure it may be out there somewhere, but if it's not out there already, we may never know. But I do know that this was a bit of a mess. It was a bit of a mess, and it could have been so much more, and it could have not rewritten or at least ignored some of the rules that it had set up for its own universe in the process. It could have adhered to what it had set up before, and that is the part that is the most disappointing of a series of disappointing bits. So, cup-wise, I would give this normally 2.5 out of 5, but because they basically trod on some of the best bits of the last film, which was a problematic film at best, but still, it had some good bits in it, which this film, you know, stepped all over. Because they did that, I'm going to dock half a cup, and I'm going to put them at 2 out of 5 cups. Harsh? Perhaps. Accurate? Absolutely. You know, you've probably already seen it on the big screen if you need to see it on the big screen, but, you know, there are some great bits and some great fights that would look great on the big screen, but, you know, I would say if you're going to see it on the big screen and you haven't already, at least catch like a late morning matinee, or, you know, get it when it's, you know, at the cheap cinema or something like that. Don't spend full price on it if at all possible. So there you go. Yeah, so that's it for the rise of Skywalker and the end of Star Wars as we know it. Or knew it. I don't know. So thanks so much for watching. I appreciate everyone who comes out for these Wayhomer reviews. Check us out on needcoffee.com for some other weirdness as we process it and get it online. And until next time, we will see you on the Wayhomer reviews. So, bye.
Can we go home and watch Rogue One now?
Absolutely.